Hello, and welcome to the Atheist Experience. I'm your host, Matt Dillahunty. Joining me this week, Tracy Harris.
Hello.
How are you?
Good.
We're so glad you could join us today. Oh, screw all that. We're live like normal. Today's Sunday, August 17th, 2008. Thanks to everybody who's joining and watching us live.
I think what I'm going to start doing is maybe pointing out that when someone says to me that people take science at face value as authoritarian, dictates of truth, I'm going to challenge them to show me someone doing that.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say that it never happens, but it certainly doesn't happen to the degree that it's dialogued about.
But even those people that do, even when they come up with examples, okay, those people are wrong. You don't.
Right.
I mean,
right, but that's not
they may have the correct answer for the wrong reasons. That's
right.
entirely possible.
And that's part of my point, is that, does the number of people who make this error merit the amount of dialogue that it gets and the chastisement that is laid down for it? And I don't believe that it does.
Well, I think there's a significant chunk of the population that would just accept basically scientific pronouncements. But I think there's a completely different reason for this. As a matter of practicality, we could not individually go and investigate and come to a complete and accurate understanding of all the knowledge that humans have acquired. So we have to rely on authorities. If I talk to Mark, a physicist, and he gives me an explanation of something, I'm going to generally accept his explanation, especially if it's one that I don't understand, which happens quite a few times. I'm going to accept that he got it right. But the thing is that my acceptance of that is tentative. If some other physicist comes up and explains why Mark got it wrong, now I've got a conflict. And then I have to begin evaluating which of these experts is more reliable. And I can't just go with my gut and say, that one sounds better to me, because I'm not an expert at it at all. So the only solution at that point is to go out and investigate. And this is one of the reasons why we end up relying on consensus science. And as long as we're all doing this with the understanding that all scientific findings are tentative, that new evidence always leads us to reevaluate these things and possibly come up with new theories, new models that completely overturn old ones. Although I have to say that as we progress, the likelihood of overturning long-established scientific models begins to decrease dramatically. It's not like we are likely to find new evidence that our understanding of gravity is completely wrong. We may learn more about it. As we begin to investigate, the macro world and the micro world, and where those formula break down and where our understanding breaks down, we would be learning more about it. But it's not like we're not likely to discover that angels actually hold your feet to the ground and push objects around in space, and we assign different numbers of angels based on the mass of the object. And that's why it looks like mass is relevant to gravity, but it's really not. I mean, it's absurd in the extreme to think that we would ever discover that we were that wrong. We have a sufficient basic understanding that we build from, that those kind of, world-turning or world-overturning discoveries are just not likely to happen.
Right. One of the things that I had, that I'm glad I just read it because it reminded me, part of what made me want to talk about this was a dialogue that I had in person with a theist who looked at a statement in the paper that had to do with the findings from the Mars rover. Mm-hmm. And there was something in the paper that talked about one of the findings and what it implicated. And then there was, like very quickly after that, there was something else had gotten analyzed, and it turned that over. So it was like, well, we thought this, but then we got further analysis, and now we see that that can't be. And he was very upset when he was talking to me, and he was just like, well, now they're saying it's completely different. Like, first it was this, and now they're saying it's the total opposite of that, like just within a couple days. And I said, yes, that's because science adjusts to fit evidence and data. So if you get new data that conflicts, and that shows you that it's not what you thought it was, you have to own up to that and say it's not what I thought it was. And one of the things I said to him was, when you tell me something, when you make a claim, when you say to me anything, doesn't that come with an understanding that it's based on everything you know?
Yeah.
And so what I wrote was, scientists speak with an asterisk beside every statement that footnotes this: based on the best and most current data available. This is no different than the same asterisk that any one of us would use in every statement of fact we would make to anyone in our lives. It is unreasonable to assume a statement from a researcher would come without such a caveat.
Yeah, and this is the underlying problem here is when we say all the time, because I can't count the number of times somebody with a religious mindset, a religious worldview, has written in to say, well, science gets it wrong all the time. How can you rely on anything science says? It's constantly changing. Holy cow, they say one thing and then later on they learn something new and say another. So there's no good reason to rely on science at all. Oh, please. Have you ever been to a doctor? Do you eat food? Do you watch the TV show? Do you have glasses?
Computer.
Are you aware that we sent people to the moon?
iPhone.
Do you have a computer? I mean, all these amenities, that's science in action. There is good reason to rely on the findings of science. The problem here is not science, it's you. You're expecting firm, true, authoritative answers because that's what religion offers. Religion is unchanging. It says God did it and that's all we ever need to know. It inhibits investigation. It can't change. Most of them are completely immune from change. And in fact, you're forced to ignore or rationalize away evidence that would conflict with a religious worldview. This need, this intense curiosity that we have, this uncomfortable feeling we have with not knowing, this desire to have answers, I understand it. It drives all of us. It's what drives scientists. Scientists are ever trying to approach that truth. But we've come to understand that because of our failings and our limited knowledge and the fact that we're fledglings at this, that all of our discoveries are tentative. There aren't absolute truths. But religion feeds you this idea and builds up a mindset where you're expecting to get answers, because that's what religion pretends to give you, when in fact most religions, at least as far as I can tell, don't actually offer real answers at all. They offer non-answers. Where did the universe come from? Well, God created it. Well, you haven't told me a thing, because you cannot describe any mechanism for this. You cannot even possibly come to a description of God. In fact, you might say that God is beyond our ken completely, that we can't even understand it. So you haven't offered me an explanation. What you have offered me is a stopgap, a way of preventing me from asking future questions, a way of inhibiting investigation and progress. I mean, that's just the way religion ends up working.
Right, because it fosters a huge level of discomfort with the honest answer, I don't know.
Yeah.
That is
tough.
so unacceptable to so many fundamentalists. It's unbelievable how uncomfortable they are with an I don't know answer. And they will give you an answer that is incorrect, and you say, you're trying to explain to them, we don't know, I don't know, and you don't know. And that answer that you're providing is not an answer. I don't know
is so uncomfortable that this answer feels good is preferable.
Yeah, I would rather say fairies make the flowers bloom than admit I don't know why flowers bloom. And it's like, well, but if you're saying the fairies make the flowers bloom and they don't, then you still don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not knowledge. It's just a patch to make you feel better, like you actually do know something that you don't. But they prefer that, and it's like they almost attack the response, I don't know. You'll say, I don't know, and they will say, oh, see, you don't know.
Yeah.
And it's like,
It
right,
could be.
I don't know.
I
and
might
why
be
is
right.
that a problem?